While Europe struggled through its dark ages, Africa ruled the world. Mighty emperors commanded armies of hundreds of thousands, built universities that attracted scholars from 3 continents, and controlled wealth that would make today's billionaires weep with envy. This is the story history tried to erase. If you're ready to discover the truth about history they never taught you in school, hit that like button right now and subscribe. Because what you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. The story begins not in Rome, not in Athens, but deep in the heart of Africa, where civilizations rose to heights that would make European kingdoms of the same era look like mere villages. These weren't primitive societies waiting to be discovered. They were superpowers that shaped trade, culture, and knowledge across 3 continents. And somehow, their stories were almost lost to time. Picture the Nile River flowing north through golden deserts and lush valleys. Most people know about Egypt and its pharaohs, but south of Egypt, in the region ancient peoples called Nubia, another kingdom rose from the sands. The kingdom of Kush emerged around 2500 BCE. And from the very beginning, it was different. While other civilizations were just learning to work bronze, the Kushites were already masters of their land, controlling vast gold mines that would make them legendary across the ancient world. The Egyptian pharaohs didn't just respect Kush, they feared it. For centuries, these 2 kingdoms existed in a tense dance of power, trading and fighting. Admiring and competing Egyptian texts speak of Kushite warriors with a mixture of respect and anxiety. These weren't the enemies Egypt could easily dismiss. The Kushites were sophisticated, organized, and wealthy beyond measure. Their archers were so skilled that Egypt hired them as elite forces. Their gold filled Egyptian treasuries. But the Kushites were building something more than military might. They were building their own destiny. Then came the 8th century BCE, and everything changed. King Pi of Kush looked north at a fractured Egypt, divided and weak, and made a decision that would echo through history. He didn't just defend his borders, he invaded. His armies swept through Egypt like a desert storm, conquering city after city. The shock rippled across the ancient world Egypt. The mighty civilization that had stood for thousands of years now bowed to African kings from the south. The irony was profound. Egypt had once looked down on Nubia, had raided it for resources, and enslaved its people. Now, Kushite pharaohs sat on Egypt's throne, wearing the double crown, ruling both kingdoms as the 25th dynasty. They didn't destroy Egyptian culture. They embraced it, preserved it, and added their own greatness to it. Under Kushite rule, Egypt experienced a renaissance. Temples were restored, art flourished, and order returned to the Nile Valley. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. While the Kushites ruled Egypt, they continued building their own monuments back home. They constructed over 200 pyramids in their homeland, more than Egypt ever built. They developed their own writing system, called Meroitic script, which scholars are still working to fully decipher today. They mastered ironworking at a time when it was cutting-edge technology, and their techniques spread across Africa, transforming societies wherever they reached. The Kingdom of Kush lasted for over 1,000 years, adapting, evolving, surviving. When they finally faded from power around 350 CE, they left behind pyramids, temples, and a legacy of African excellence that challenges every stereotype. Yet most history books give them a footnote at best. The conquered became conquerors, and the world forgot across the continent another power was rising. In the highlands of modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, the kingdom of Aksum was building an empire that would be ranked alongside Rome, Persia, and China. This wasn't hyperbole. A 3rd-century Persian prophet literally listed Aksum as one of the 4 great powers of the world. Think about that. While Rome was at its height, Africa had an empire considered its equal. Aksum's power came from its position. It controlled the Red Sea trade routes, the vital corridor connecting the Mediterranean world with India, Arabia, and beyond. Gold, ivory, incense, and exotic goods flowed through Aksumite ports. The kingdom's merchants spoke multiple languages, understood international markets, and built relationships across 3 continents. They weren't waiting for the world to come to them. They were active players in global commerce. King Ezana, who ruled in the 4th century CE, transformed Aksum from a powerful kingdom into a true superpower. He expanded the empire's borders, conquered neighboring regions, and made a decision that would define his kingdom's identity for centuries. He converted to Christianity, making Aksum one of the first Christian kingdoms in the world. This was before most of Europe had embraced the faith. African Christianity wasn't imported. It was established when Rome was still transitioning from paganism. But Aksum's achievements went far beyond religion. They minted their own coins, struck in gold, silver, and bronze. In the ancient world, this was a declaration of sovereignty and economic power. Only major civilizations had their own currency. Aksum's coins have been found across the Indian Ocean trade network, physical evidence of their commercial reach. They bore inscriptions in Greek, the international language of trade, showing how connected and sophisticated this African kingdom truly was. The engineering marvels of Aksum still stand today, defying easy explanation. The kingdom erected massive stone obelisks, carved from single pieces of granite. The largest one weighs an estimated 500 tons and stands over 100 feet tall. How did they quarry, transport, and erect such monuments with 4th century technology? Modern engineers study these structures with respect and puzzlement. The precision of the carving, the stability of the construction, the artistic sophistication all speak to a civilization with advanced knowledge and remarkable organization. Aksum developed its own alphabet, Ge'ez, which evolved into the script still used in Ethiopia today. They built elaborate water management systems, constructed multi-story buildings, and created art that blended African, Arabian, and Mediterranean influences into something uniquely their own. This was a cosmopolitan civilization, confident in its identity yet open to the world. Then the Islamic expansion changed trade routes, and Aksum gradually declined, but its cultural legacy never died. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church traces its roots directly to Aksumite Christianity. The pride, the identity, the sense of ancient greatness survived through centuries. Now the story moves west, to the grasslands and rivers of West Africa, where perhaps the most famous African kingdom of all would rise to astonishing heights. The Mali Empire emerged in the 13th century from the vision of Sundiata Keita, a legendary warrior king. But it was his descendant, Mansa Musa, who would make Mali synonymous with unimaginable wealth. In 1324, Mansa Musa decided to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, as required by his Islamic faith. What happened next became the stuff of legend. He didn't travel alone. He brought 60,000 people with him. Imagine that procession. Soldiers, officials, servants, slaves, merchants, all moving across Africa toward the Middle East. They brought hundreds of camels, each loaded with gold. Not just some gold, hundreds of pounds of pure gold. As they traveled through Cairo, Mansa Musa displayed his wealth with casual generosity that shocked everyone who witnessed it. He gave gold to everyone he met. He bought goods at prices that made merchants weep with joy. He donated to mosques, schools, and the poor. He was so generous, so lavish, that he created an economic crisis. The value of gold in Egypt crashed and didn't recover for over a decade. One man's generosity had destabilized an entire economy. Modern historians have tried to calculate Mansa Musa's wealth. The estimates are staggering. Adjusted for inflation and relative value, he may have been worth over $400 billion in today's money. That would make him the wealthiest person in human history, richer than any pharaoh, any emperor, any modern billionaire. And he ruled a kingdom that stretched across an area larger than Western Europe. But Mali's greatness wasn't just about gold. The empire was a center of learning that rivaled anything in the medieval world. The city of Timbuktu became legendary, a place where knowledge was treasured like gold. The University of Sankore attracted scholars from across the Islamic world. At its peak, it hosted 25,000 students studying mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, and literature. The city's libraries contained hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, carefully copied and preserved, containing knowledge from ancient civilizations. Here's the part that challenges everything we're taught about the medieval period. While Europe was struggling through what it calls its Dark Ages, African scholars in Timbuktu were advancing mathematics, documenting astronomical observations, performing complex surgeries, and debating philosophy. European scholars actually traveled to Timbuktu to study the flow of knowledge wasn't from Europe to Africa. It was the other way around. Mali had sophisticated government systems with councils and representation. It had established trade networks connecting West Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. It had standardized weights and measures, maintained roads and security across vast distances, and created a currency system that facilitated commerce across the empire. This was advanced civilization by any measure. The empire eventually fragmented, its territories breaking into smaller kingdoms. But its legacy lived on in the manuscripts, in the architectural marvels of its cities, and in the oral traditions that kept its stories alive far to the south and east. In the region between the Zambezi and Limpopo rivers, another remarkable civilization was flourishing. The Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe built a city from stone that would become one of Africa's greatest archaeological treasures, and one of history's most shameful examples of denial. The structures at Great Zimbabwe were built between the 11th and 15th centuries, using a technique that amazes architects today. Massive walls, some over 30 feet high, were constructed from granite blocks fitted together without any mortar. The precision is extraordinary. The blocks interlock so perfectly that many walls still stand after 600 years. The largest structure, the Great Enclosure, has walls that run for over 800 feet, creating a complex that could house thousands of people. This was clearly a major city, the capital of a vast trading empire. Archaeologists have found artifacts from China, India, Persia, and Arabia. Glass beads, porcelain, gold jewelry, and other luxury goods prove that Great Zimbabwe was connected to international trade networks. The kingdom exported gold and ivory, and its economic influence reached across the Indian Ocean. But when European colonizers arrived and saw these magnificent structures, they couldn't accept the obvious truth. They created elaborate theories about lost white civilizations, about Phoenicians or Arabs who must have built these structures. The idea that black Africans could create such architectural marvels contradicted their racist assumptions. So they lied. They spread false narratives that persisted for decades, even centuries. It took modern archaeology to prove what should have been obvious from the beginning. Great Zimbabwe was built by the ancestors of the Shona people. The construction techniques, the cultural artifacts, the continuity of tradition, all confirm this. The kingdom represented sophisticated urban planning, advanced engineering, and complex social organization. It was a center of power that controlled vast territories and accumulated great wealth through trade and tribute. The kingdom's decline came gradually, possibly due to environmental changes, shifting trade routes, or internal political struggles. But it left behind undeniable evidence of African ingenuity and achievement. Today, the name Zimbabwe honors this great civilization, a direct connection between modern Africa and its powerful past. Gumvrius four kingdoms represent just a fraction of Africa's historical greatness. There were others. The Kingdom of Congo, the House of City-States, the Swahili coastal civilizations. The Kingdom of Benin with its bronze castings that rival any in the world. Each had its own story of achievement, innovation, and power. What connects all these stories is the systematic erasure they suffered. Colonial powers needed to justify their exploitation of Africa and its people. They created narratives of primitive societies waiting to be civilized, of dark continents with no history worth remembering. They ignored, dismissed, or actively destroyed evidence of Africa's achievements. They rewrote history to center Europe as the source of all progress and civilization. But the truth survives. In the pyramids of Sudan, in the obelisks of Ethiopia, in the manuscripts of Timbuktu, in the stone walls of Zimbabwe. These civilizations had advanced governments, international trade, universities and scholarship, engineering marvels, and economic power that shaped the world. They weren't isolated or backward. They were central players in global history, influencing cultures across 3 continents. Understanding these kingdoms changes how we see history itself. It challenges the narrative of European exceptionalism. It proves that human achievement, innovation, and greatness aren't limited by geography or race. These African kingdoms rose to heights that rivaled or surpassed their European contemporaries. They created, they built, they governed, they traded, they learned, and they taught. This is the history they didn't teach you. The story that was almost erased. But knowledge, like the great kingdoms themselves, refuses to be buried forever. The truth endures. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden greatness of African history, show your support by smashing that like button, subscribe for more untold stories that will challenge everything you thought you knew. Share this with someone who needs to know the truth, and comment below which kingdom shocked you the most. Next time, we'll explore African inventions and innovations that changed the entire world. You won't want to miss it.